Acharon, this next segment is going to be something a little bit different than the typical segments we've had in the past on previous Oorahthons, but we are living in different times. The next segment has been coined Legacy of Our Leaders. And we have dedicated this next hour to celebrating the lives and legacies of some of the outstanding individuals Klal Yisrael recently lost. In the weeks leading up to Pesach, we were overwhelmed. So many of our community's most influential and respected Rabbanim and lay leaders were taken from us. And we weren't able to properly reflect on and perhaps recognize their incredible achievements and contributions to the Klal. We are not here tonight to eulogize, but rather to pay tribute to some of these great individuals and to remember and be inspired by their remarkable accomplishments. We can't possibly begin to do justice to all, but we must at least take this opportunity to step back and reflect on what we had, on the kind of people we were fortunate to have as leaders. We will be hearing tonight from various people relating to us uplifting memories and powerful stories from people that come from a diverse representation of some of these cheshuvim. From the Novominsker Rebbe Zatzal to Ziv Rothschild and BYA's Mora Blau.
Okay. Mora Rachel Blau Zechron Levracha was a beloved longtime mechaneches of BYA, Beis Yaakov Academy Elementary School, a position from which she impacted the future of Klal Yisrael by molding thousands of Neshei Yisrael. Chinuch Habanos was her goal in life, but she didn't just teach a subject matter. She taught her many students lessons for life, both through inspiring and passionate classes and by personal example. Thousands of women throughout the world carry on her legacy, and indeed, it's our pleasure to have with us Rebbetzin Esther Reisman, wife of Rabbi Yisrael Reisman, Rosh Yeshiva of Torah Vodaas, Morda Asra of Agudas Yisrael of Madison, and a Rebbetzin in her own right, a distinguished mechaneches, an inspiring lecturer who will share some thoughts and memories about Rebbetzin Rachel Blau. Rebbetzin Reisman, thank you for joining us.
I had the zchus of being in close contact with Mrs. Blau for many, many years. She was my beloved Chumash teacher in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, and she taught us Parsha when we were in the 12th grade. She was my daughter's principal, she was my granddaughter's principal, and I had the zchus of spending all the years of my adult life in the halls of BYA. For 1 year, I taught alongside Mrs. Blau, which was, I was frankly in awe of her. And it was hard for me to sit down at the same lunch table at Mrs. Blau. And then she became principal of elementary school, and I got to see her almost every day on my way up, on my way down. I was always in awe of her, but I have to say, as much as I would say, incredible, Mrs. Blau, so brilliant, so talented, but of course, that's Mrs. Blau. I kind of knew that Mrs. Blau was in a league by herself, but kind of took it for granted. That degree of brilliance, of clarity, of talent, Mrs. Blau could do in a day what it took someone else to do 2 weeks. Of course, that's Mrs. Blau. We kind of just took it for granted that Mrs. Blau is in a league by herself. Mrs. Blau had a strong sense of mission. She always invoked her teacher, Rebbetzin Kaplan, Alei Shalom, and spoke about Sarah Schneerer. And there was a strong sense of mission that drove her. But interactions with her were always light, charming, pleasant. I always walked out of her office smiling. One incident, when my daughter was in pre-1A, I dropped her off at school one day, and as she left the car, As she was getting out of my minivan, the strap of her jumper got caught on some part of the car, and the button popped off and went flying into the gutter. And there were cars beeping behind me. I couldn't pull over. I said, I'm so sorry. I can't help you right now. Go into the office and ask them to pin it. And then when you get home, I'll take care of it. I'm so sorry. I can't even stop. There was no place to stop. There's no place to pull over. That afternoon, my daughter comes home from school and her jumper's perfect. There's a new button neatly sewn on. I said, what happened? She said, I went into the office to ask for a safety pin and Mrs. Blau saw me. So she took a thread and she found a button and she sewed on a button. That was typical Mrs. Blau. I remember her tests. Even as a student, I would marvel at the brilliance, the clarity, the comprehensiveness of her tests. How you had to know it, and you had to know a lot. And she neatly categorized all her questions in such intriguing and clever categories. But at the same time that her tests were comprehensive and they weren't so easy, she would answer questions, unlike some teachers say, no questions, and she'd go up and down the rows. And sometimes, if she saw that I was troubled by a question, she would give me a little hint with a wink and a smile. She demanded a lot, but she wanted us to succeed, and she was always on our side. I would come to school in the morning, and Mrs. Blau would be standing there in the lobby greeting each and every student. So, how's your new baby? You got new shoes? You got a new haircut? She remembered so much about each student and greeted them so warmly. My granddaughter thought Mrs. Blau was her best friend. She would compose drawings and poems to take to school and show to Mrs. Blau. Mrs. Blau would sometimes take her by the hand and run through the halls. So many children had that feeling, like Mrs. Blau, yes, the incredible, awesome, elevated Mrs. Blau, who was somebody we looked up to so much, but to the little children, she's my friend. She cares about me. I can talk to her. And yes, we took Mrs. Blau for granted because she was just in a league by herself. But now that she's no longer here, we cherish what she taught us. We hope to live up to what she expected of us, and her words live on in our hearts and the hearts of the children forever and ever and ever. Yehi Zechra Baruch.
Tzin Reisman.
Right. Thank you very much, Rabbi Tzin Reisman. I believe we do have Rabbi Ozeri with us now to share with us some words and memories about Rabbi David Jamel. Rabbi Ozeri.
Good evening. Shavua Tov. Good vach. Rabbi David Jamel was a very dear friend of mine. And if you think of Rabbi Jamel and you want to come up with a pasuk to fit his life, it was Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, to serve Hashem with joy. This was Rabbi David Jamel. The first time I met him was my early days in Ner Yisrael, in Ner Yisrael. I was a boy of 15 that came to the high school there, and there was an interesting fellow there by the name of David Jamel, who was 17 years old, and he didn't know language. He knew Hebrew and he knew Arabic. He came from Beirut. Why would a young boy come from Beirut to Ner Israel? Because the community in Beirut, the Jewish community there, sent him. They wanted him to get smicha. They wanted him to become a rabbi and to go back and serve the community. And that's exactly what he did. Those years in Baltimore, he learned diligently. He also learned things that you needed for Rabbanut. He learned Shechita. He learned Milah. And he really didn't have much of command of the English language. He would sit and listen to a shmuz from Rabbi Tender, Alav Shalom, and he would pick one line from that shmuz, whether he understood it or he didn't understood, and in his broken language, he would go around all week long repeating that sentence over and over and over again. He had a tremendous love for Talmidei Chachamim. He had a tremendous love for Torah. He loved mitzvot. On him we could say, Hacham lev yikach mitzvot. The wise one grabs mitzvot. This was Rabbi David Jamel. Any mitzvah that there was, he was just elated to do that mitzvah. It could be sukkah, lulav, shofar, milah, shahita, kisui adam, you name it. He loved to do mitzvot. And people saw this great love on his face when he did a mitzvah. One of the greatest mitzvot that he excelled in was v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. He loved every Jew, and everybody in our community knew it. He lived on the next block from me. And on Shabbat, he would be walking one way, and I would be walking the other way, because he was going to his shul and I was going to my shul. We would bump into each other. From a half a block before he would see me, he would start dancing in the streets. This was Rabbi David Jamal. This is the Ahavat Yisrael that he had. And his love for Tinokot Shel Bet Rabban surpassed it all. There are thousands of Talmidim and Talmidot where their fondest memory was Rabbi Jamal coming into their preschool and teaching them Pizmonim, songs for the Yom Tov. He would give them a little corn candy, a little winky. Wasn't worth anything, but if you got it from Rabbi Jamal, it meant everything in the world. He loved those children like no one could ever imagine. He never, ever hurt a child's feelings, ever. He was an outstanding Talmid Chacham. He went back to Beirut to serve his community as a Bahur, and he became the rabbi there. And then the revolution broke out in Lebanon, and everybody was forced to flee. He came back to America. Where would he go? He went to the Mir Yeshiva. I remember seeing him there. What was his Seder Hayom? What was he learning? He was learning mikvaot. He was learning kelim. He was learning basar v'halav. This was the great Talmid Chacham that he was. Kasher selukan shel tzadikim kechorban bet hamikdash. Great is the loss of a tzaddik, like the destruction of a bet hamikdash. What kind of tzaddik was he? Lo asa l're'eu ra'ah. He never hurt anybody. Lo ragala leshono. He never ever spoke lashon hara. Holech tamim. He walked with perfect innocence. Po'el tzedek. He did his entire life what was right. V'dover emet bilvavo. He spoke truth from the heart. Him and his Rebbetzin built a beautiful family of many Talmidei Chachamim, sons and daughters and grandchildren, who today are outstanding members in the Kehillah. Rabbi Jamal was the perfect example of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted from a human being on this earth. V'chol bet Yisrael yifku et haserefa asher saraf Hashem. Yehi zichro baruch, teheh nishmato tzura v'tzora hayim. Amen.
Thank you so much, Rabbi David Ozeri, for those inspiring words. Yehi Zichroi Baruch, he should be a Melitziashe for his family and all of Klal Yisrael. Thank you very much, Rabbi Schnell.
In Lakewood, New Jersey, we lost 3 giants. Rav Yehuda Jacobs, Zeichet Tzadik Levracha, was a beloved long-time mashkiach at BMG of Lakewood. He gave hadracha to many, from Bachrim to families to couples. He founded the Regesh Network, a hotline to help teenagers struggling, which impacted the community on so many levels. Rabbi Jacobs provided strong, empathetic leadership and is sorely missed by many. Rav Mendel Rabinowitz was a visionary leader involved in many aspects of chinuch. He was the founder and principal of the Yeshiva Ketana and Mesivta Keren HaTorah of Lakewood, and was a founding and leading member of Lakewood's Igor HaMoistus. He was a man out for the klal, Isaac b'tzarchei tzibur. He was also a baki b'halacha and was renowned as one of the most prominent experts in Daled Minim. Ziv Rothschild, a selfless man, was one of Lakewood's biggest Bali Chesed. He was completely devoted to the klal. all with no fanfare, with his humble and quiet demeanor. He was the founder and owner of NPGS, a non-profit grocery store, just one of his many activities to help the tzibur. He was also a brilliant Talmid Chacham with sterling midas, and he is so sorely missed. We are joined tonight by Rav Shmuel Blech Shlita, a Talmid of Rav Aaron Kotler Zatzal, and is the longtime Rav of Kahal Anshe Sfard. He is widely respected as a senior Rav here in the Lakewood community, and he very graciously agreed to take the time tonight to share remarks on these three giants, a few of the chashuvim that were nifter here in Lakewood, and the impact that these individuals had on the Lakewood community. A good davach, Rabbi Blech, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction. This is a very challenging moment when we speak about Giborei Chayil, Azel, Levaya, special people who have been selected to represent not only the legacy that's reflected in the life that they led, but also the many others, unfortunately, that so tragically we lost over this period of time. Some that we could measure the impact, and other Nestorim whose impact cannot so easily be measured because they weren't in full view. Nevertheless, all of us express our heartfelt Helgoshim of Divrei Nechama to the families and to the extended families, all of us, extended families of these great, wonderful, special people who did so much for the tzibur and were so much an integral part of the fabric of the Lakewood community. And at the same time, also, it's important to take notice of those that are still suffering and the horrendous impact of this Magefa that has engulfed Klal Yisrael. And for all of us, we wish collectively that they have a Revuah Shalema B'Korov. And it's specifically significant that I'd like to be Magdim this. I would like to start by saying and that the Ramak, Rav Moshe Kadavero, in his Choshev Sefer and Tomer Devorah, tells us an extraordinary chiddush. V'ahavta l'reyacha kamocha. And that statement, which is so familiar to all of us, and is a somewhat of a struggle. How can we, in fact, care for someone like ourselves? He tells us, and that the real understanding of it is, and that it falls under the category of She'eris Nachaloso, his Hanoga, Hashem's Hanoga, in which he feels the kurva, the closest, as if we are inseparable. Yisrael v'Yisrael K'Shibru Chadu, we're one. And therefore, after the Acha Kamoicha is really an extension of that concept. We care for each other not because we attempt to make ourselves feel as if the other person, but literally, we are all one flesh. That concept is brought to attention now during this difficult time that we're all suffering together. Where Yidin b'chol makom shehem, b'chol tvutzas Yisrael, every Yid feels for everyone else, and particularly in our Kehillah, the Kehillah Kadosh of Lakewood, and which had now undergone this enormous loss of these three people that Rabbi Schnall has mentioned earlier, these three very special people for all of us. And I think the Shtana Shavashibah, the thread that runs through, and that they are Amudei Hatzibur. Amudei Hatzibur. We know now, Shleisha Dvar Mo'elim Oimei, the world stands on three foundations, three pillars. Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. And we wonder if, in fact, Chazal wanted to depict for us the security that holds up the world, would it not be more appropriate to say four things, like a four-corner table, a four-legged table? Why a three-legged table? A three-legged table is more likely to topple. The lesson therein is that Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim, each individually is ma'akev, must be in place. We have a four-legged table and one is weak, you just shift the weight over to the other side, you can still use the table. We have a three-legged table, one leg is weak, it's done, it's finished, it falls.
Torah avoiding l'sasodim is and the tone and the flavor of each and every one of these great special people. Rabbi Yehuda Zechat Tzadik Levracha, who was from the Talmidim of Hakim of the Heilige Rosh Yeshiva Rabban Zechat Tzadik Levracha, who even as a young bacher, was Nechmad Einoi, was beloved back by the Shiva, and he carried with him that persona. He reflected the presence of what the Yeshiva represented and carried it over to this next generation. That responsibility he carried so nobly. And who can forget? I remember coming as a very young boy to Yeshiva, 1 o'clock at night, every night, and the doors to the base medrash would swing open, and if Yehuda Jacobs, we were walking out and going back to his dormitory room. He had his kaviyas, a kodesh mirechem for the first moment. And he maintained that dignity and the reflection of the presence of the Rosh Yeshiva Zechat Tzadik Levracha until the very last moment. Everyone knew him as the Chacham Shebachacham, the Bikeach. Mendel Rabinowitz, Zechrenu Levracha. We speak about Reb Mendel, our Yedidus, L'chaim Tovim goes back so long, and Reb Mendel represented for everyone that kind of determination to be able to be makriv and sacrifice for others. The chinuch abilities that he had and his chasodim were legendary. And there were things that were carried on constantly and consistently, and from the earliest moments. And naturally, he left behind him such a wonderful legacy, the chinuch system that's in place directly and indirectly because of him, the wonderful mishpacha, and that he was able to share with his Isha Chashuva. And naturally, when we speak about Reb Ziv Rothschild, I directly benefited from the chasodim of this wonderful family. Reb Ziv's parents, Reb Yonason and Doris Rothschild, L'chaim Tovim, she should be healthy and well, that personified the chesed and the hemshech of the doiros that Dr. Muller, her father, represented. And these are his pieces of American history. These families, the Jacobs and the Rabinowitzes, the Rothschilds, are not only individuals that represented Torah and avoiding milas hasodim, but they were literally the hemshech that enabled that the transformation of what was at one time could be able to be recreated here in America through the families that they represented. The legacy of Reb Shamshul Fall Hirsch, and that's what was reflected in the Anhaga of Reb Ziv, the Chasodim, that extraordinary Chasodim. And each and every one of these three, each one reflected the Tzelem Elokim. And I have to say in that regard, we learned the Mishnah in this week's Perek, Chamisha Kinyonim, the Eibush has 5 Kinyonim. And what are the 5 Kinyonim in the world that he has? The Brisa tells us, Shemayim v'Oretz, Torah first, Shemayim v'Oretz second, Avram Avinu third, Yisrael fourth, and Beis HaMikdash fifth. That means that if we would wonder, do we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is captured? It's captured in Torah. It's captured in Shemayim v'Oretz. It's captured in Avraham. It's captured in Yisrael, and it's captured in Beis HaMikdash. But the lesson is extraordinary. Beis HaMikdash, we understand. Beis HaMikdash, that's a place that we all visit and were inspired by. We recharged our batteries. We were able to see the hand of Hashem, the miracles. But can we compare Avraham to Beis HaMikdash? So from here we see an exceptional thought that those individuals who were able to encapsulate within themselves, capture that kind of picture of Tzelem Elokim, they are as significant in establishing the presence of Hashem as Beis HaMikdash is itself. So Avram Avinu, just Avram Avinu, conduct himself the way he was, is Beis HaMikdash. And I have to say that these three people, Rabbi Yehuda Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, and Rabbi Mendel Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, Rabbi Ziv Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, Zechroinim L'Bracha, Schlusim Yoga Leinu V'al Kol Yisrael, Zamzari Gutta Betis for all. They were the direct reflection of the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our tzibur and the strength of our tzibur. It's indescribable for us. It's so difficult to want. We haven't really been able to measure the impact of what this loss means, given the circumstances that we're all under. We certainly hope that the Eibishter will help, first of all, to send an Achama to the Mishpachas Beis Hashem, and be able to us as a tzibur, to be able to give us the strength to continue in the wonderful example and that they set forth for us, to mamshech it and be able, Be'ez Hashem, all of us collectively together, but to get beyond this terrible magefa, to see Yeshua Hashem clarify it.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Rabbi Blech. A good tavach. And we will return after this short commercial break.
And welcome back to the Oorah Auction 2020 in our wonderful hour here, Inspiring Legacies. We want to interject for just a moment to remind you to call in or go online to oorahauction.org to donate for the auction. The prizes will be picked later this evening. You can do it if you want to make a donation or put in for a prize, l'schus refuah shlema for someone, or l'nishma someone, or just to support the mission of Kiruv that Oorah represents. So we're reminding you, 1-877-7-AUCTION, 1-877-7-AUCTION. We have with my co-host, Rabbi Avishnal and Rabbi Biederman, talking about the legacies of some of those that we've lost over these last difficult few months. Rabbi Biederman is here with another guest.
Good evening. One of the unique leaders that we lost was the Minsker Rebbe of Yaakov Perlau, who was a Rebbe, a Rosh Hashiva, and a Manig Yisrael. From his seat as the head of Agudas Yisrael, as a member of Me'atzes Gedolei HaTorah of America, as a Rosh Hashiva of Yeshivas Novominsk, and as a respected Gadol B'Torah, his influence on the Jewish community was unparalleled. Indeed, he was a true leader for the entire nation. With us, we are privileged to have Rabbi Nosson Muller, Menal of Yeshivat Torah Tzvi in Chicago, close Talmud of the Rebbe, who later became a close family member. Well-known lecturer and author, he has so much to share about his Rebbe. Rabbi Muller, we're glad that you were able to join us. Thank you. A good tavach.
A good tavach, and a good chaydish to everybody. Yashikayach to Oorah for this opportunity. I think understandably, it's quite difficult in just a few moments to touch upon the godless of the Rebbe and his Avodah, in his Torah, in his Yireh Shamayim. Every fiber of his being screamed out, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol maidecha. That was the Rebbe. Everybody who knew him, and even those who didn't know him, felt a gewaldige connection, an unbelievable connection to the Rebbe, because it was Kamayim Ponim El Ponim, how much he loved every Yid and cared for Klal Yisrael as a whole, and every Yid as a prat. There was a Gemara that the Rebbe always used to tell us, as Bachram in Yeshiva, the Gemara in Yuma Daf Peivav Amud Aleph, on that pasuk that we just said, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, which simply means every Yid in his Avodas Hayom has to serve the Rebbeinu Shloim with ahava. But the Gemara, with a little play on the words of V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, says, it's not enough for a Yid to love the Rebbeinu Shloim. He has to ensure in his Avodah, throughout his day, throughout his life, that through him, other Yidden come close to the Rebbeinu Shloim. That people should look at a Yid, a Ben Torah, who's learning Torah, who's doing mitzvahs, and say, Ashrei Aviv Shalom de Torah. Lucky is this man's father that brought up such a boy, that brought up such a girl. Asher Rabbi Shalom de Torah. And the Rebbe used to impart that in us always, that the tafkid of a Yid is not only to serve Hashem for yourself, but to ensure that everybody else is connecting with the Rebbeinu Shleila. And although this is a Gemara that every Talmud knows, just because the Rebbe mentioned this so many times, talking Motzei Shabbos Kodesh to Oorah, I think that personifies what Oorah did, and Oorah does and continues to do. Programs, counselors, Rebbeim, that's all Gavaldik. And we can instill and implement so many things in Kinderlach and in adults. But the ultimate kiruv, the way we can be Mekar of Levavis Yisrael, especially at such times, and especially of times of turmoil, when we act, when Yidden act and do Kiddush Shem Shemayim. Everybody commented how the Rebbe's Levaya was maybe the biggest Levaya that the tri-state area saw. It was the biggest, not in Kamos, there were no people there, but it was the greatest Levaya in Sheyehei Shem Shemayim Misayev Al Yodcha. What greater Kiddush Hashem was there that the Rebbeinu Shalom B'Hashkachosai took away such an Adam Gadol B'Yisrael. His Levaya was the biggest Levaya we had because the Yehei Shem Shemayim Misayev Al Yodcha, how even the Goyim saw, look, Ru'u, the beauty of a Yiddish kind, how they understand that sometimes, even when it's difficult, we have to do what's right. And that's what the Rebbe personified. But I think there's another Nakuda that we could touch upon for just a moment, talking about connecting to other Yidden, which Oorah always does. The Rebbe, as the Rambam says, the Melech of Klal Yisrael is Leiv Kol the heart of the entire nation. And that was the Rebbe. You have to have a heart. It's not enough. You could teach, you could jump on the stage, you could dance, you could sing. You have to feel for every Yid. And the way the Rebbe felt for another Yid was awesome. I remember last Erev Yom Kippur was by the Rebbe, by the Sudas HaMafsekes, and Imamish started to cry, tears. Who was he crying about? Not the people he knew. He said, Veis Fifil Yidden, do we know how many Yidden there are in Eretz Yisrael? Nebuch, Freie Yidden, who aren't from yet. They're not there yet. But Yom Kippur they know about. And Yom Kippur they're fasting. What would the Baditcha Baruch say on such Yidden? The Rebbe's heart was pouring out at 4:30 Erev Yom Kippur in the afternoon. What was he thinking about? Achenu b'nei Yisrael b'chol mokem shehev. Not the Frumme, not the Hamish Yidden in Borough Park. Avada das eichet. But what was on his mind was a Beine Shleilim, Mihot Kinderlach in Eretz Yisrael, who don't know you so well, who aren't close to you. But it's Erev Yom Kippur, and they want to have a shaykhis to you. I want to end with a short personal story. About 12 years ago, the Rebbe gave my mishpacha for Chanukah a beautiful book, a very big book called Witness to History on Churban Yerupa, written by Mrs. Ruth Lichtenstein, who the Rebbe very much encouraged to bring to today's Kinderlach, to today's generation. We should never forget what happened. And the Rebbe gave my mishpacha for Chanukah. He gave us this big 650-page massive book that goes through the whole Churban from beginning to end, all the countries, all the cities, all the Gedolim, all the Yidden that were affected, 6 million. And I took it home, Motzei Shabbos Chanukah, and I noticed that my son, my 10-year-old son, was reading the book pretty, with Agreis Hasmada. And 6 weeks later, he was finished. He finished the book, 650 pages. 10-year-old boy. A few weeks later, we were in Borough Park for Shabbos by the Rebbe, and I told the Rebbe, the matana was well used. My son Avrumi, went ahead and he read the book from cover to cover. I thought the Rebbe would say, "Whoa, let me buy you another book." Turns to my son and he says, "Avrumi, I want to ask you one question. When you read the book, did you cry?" My son, a 10-year-old boy, Baruch Hashem, mit gesagt der Emes, he said no. And the Rebbe turned to him and he said, "Then you have to read it again." That was the Rebbe. If you couldn't cry for another Yid, 6 million Yidden who you don't know about, then you got to read it again. Because a Yid has to be makash himself and care about and worry about every Yid. I think if the Rebbe would be here tonight, the Rebbe Zecher Tzadik Kavod would say, we suffered a Holocaust of 6 million Yidden 80 years ago. But there's a Holocaust going on today with unfortunately more than 6 million Yidden. Millions and millions of Yidden who don't know who the Rabbeinu Shloim is, who don't know Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, who don't know Sheyehem Shem Shemayim Misayev Al Yodcha. And if we could all help out this Motzei HaKodesh Ura and enable Sheyehei Shem Shemayim Misayev Al Yodcha, that the Rabbeinu Shloim's name, Yiskada v'Yiskada Shemei Rabba, throughout the world, especially during these times, to be Mekarev, that people should look at us from a Yidden and say, Ashrei Rabbi Shalom Dei Torah, Ashrei Aviv Shalom Dei Torah, Yisrael Ato, Asher B'choy Espoya, like the Gemara over there ends. That a Yid should be looked at and say, you're the one that we want to be like. That would be the Gester Kiddush Shem Shemayim. Baruch Shem Zahelfen Take, that the Rebbe Zecher Tzadik Kavod should be a Melech Yosef for all of Klal Yisrael, Yeshuas and Refuas, and the Chamais Lanu L'Chol Yisrael.
Amen. Thank you very much, Rabbi Muller, for those poignant reflections. I turn the mic over to my co-host, Rabbi Avi Schnall.
Thank you, Rabbi Biederman. Rabbi Avram Aaron Rabashkin, builder of the largest kosher slaughterhouse in North America, revolutionized the meat industry for all of Klal Yisrael. But he was much more than that. He was a humble and generous person, an ish chesed, whose many acts of tzedakah nourished people much more than just physically. We are joined tonight by his son, Rav Shalom Mordechai Rabashkin, who is a paradigm of Amunah and Bitachon, and he'll be giving us a glimpse into the life of his father Zatzal. Welcome, Rav Shalom Mordechai.
And Baruch Hashem, I have the supposed to be able to join you, and I take the wonderful. I didn't see it personally, but the wonderful campus you have with the zone up there. My son is right next to you, and he has a wonderful relationship. Baruch Hashem, we're working together, and I just want to. And it's important to note that every time he would come back and from upstate and come visit my father would be very interested in what your work you're doing, how you're doing, and he would always tell my son, "They are fine mention." That was the compliment of my son many times. I heard it before, and obviously words that you heard about from your father describing "they are fine mention." Baruch Hashem, that was his obviously role, obviously, and he knew all you very personally because he's been about in Borough Park. I was born in Borough Park, obviously grew up. So I want to just, this is not the Hesped, I was told. This is a time to share some stories so that we can live a chayit in Libra, so we can take it to life. So to start off, the way my father passed away, he was 92 years old, and he worked at a very, very last day before he got sick. And I remember coming, when this happened for me by Hanukkah, I once went to walk with him to the store. I asked him, Tata, why are you still going to work? I mean, a person your age who is 90 years old, and why are you going to work? So he says to me that that person was created to work. By him going to work wasn't just like let's make another dollar. It was Mamash Avedis Hashem. He felt he had to accomplish, and I want to share with you a few stories in the day of work. And Mamash says in Shabbos how he looked in every single part of his work and a way to bring out the chesed, how to help a yid, how to be mechazik yid, the amunah, and the bitachon devish, with a smile, with a good word. So I'll start off myself personally. When I started helping in the store, I was helping the store as a young child. Then I got married, and then I helped him in the business. One Friday afternoon, after his mamash was out 3 hours before Shabbos, and the store was already winding down. I remember him standing there, and I'm a young guy, and I'm thinking, this in business, you must do things this way and that way. And then he gave me a moment of advice. He says, Shalom Mordechai, let me tell you what business is really all about. He says that you should always remember that you are standing by food. Yeah, you're selling meat. People need for Shabbos. And sometimes a woman will walk in and she won't have money to buy the meat, and maybe her account is full. So you have to make sure when that happens, chas v'sholom, you shouldn't be standing in the middle in front of it, and you have to make sure that she has the meat for Shabbos, because that's what you're dealing with. And to me, it was like a lesson. The geld Eibishter geben, my father's mother was mamish incredible, and he saw it every single day. He says, your job is to make sure that the person doesn't have the money and he needs food for Shabbos, you have food for Shabbos. And for me, it was a tremendous lesson. He started to give me a business advice, how to make another dollar. And he explained me that, well, the whole business is to remember that you're standing in front, you're only, the Eibush is putting you in front of a business which is providing food for Klal Yisrael. And later, in a very big way, when he had the factory, the agri-processors in Postville, he always tried to provide the food in a way that every person should be able to afford it, and to make sure it's like a kosher, kedas echudin, without any chokhmas. He had the biggest rabbanim coming over there, making sure everything's done properly. And then I tell you a story at the yeshiva. I remember standing as a young boy in the store at night. Everything is closed up already. I pulls a car, and Al jumps out a few. I can see by the face, but they get a few yeshiva or administrative official, I think from the Delphi yeshiva. They walk in. They get a big break Shalom Aleichem to my father. My father pulls out a few big sacks, like these 50-pound sacks, and they all grab a sack and they go to the showcase and they start piling in meat from the showcase. Whatever's left over from the day. But left over, it's not left over, it's not going to garbage, it's to be sold. And that was the food they gave to the yeshiva. Nobody was watching it, nobody was seeing this. I remember filled up a few 50-pound sacks of, I think it was roasts over there, not just chopped meat and salami. He took and this is this is the way he helped this yeshiva and that yeshiva with money. And on a personal level, he davened in a shul on the corner, the Kosten yeshiva. The Kosten Rebbe was there. Also, the Kosten Rebbe was born in the Bronx. He liked over there to go daven there, and he noticed over there that a boy, it's Shabbos, everybody go home, and he noticed that one of the boys, Thursday night, Friday, he noticed that he's still there. In fact, he asked the Bacher, why are you not going home like everybody else is going home? How do I know? We know the story. I never knew the story. I know the story. I had a Pesach, somebody came from the Costa Bakery, came to the Motzei to my parents' home, and he shared the story. So he says, he knows the story because this was his friend. So, he says to my father, listen, first of all, to get back, his parents lived in Motzei, and $6 of the cost to get onto the Motzei tourist bus, he didn't have. And anyways, his parents are very poor, there's no food in the house. Anyways, he's going back for us, he stays in yeshiva. Can you imagine such a story in Kop, yeah? My father hears this, it must have really shook him up. And not just shook him up, but he made a krecht and went weiter. He told the boy, you come over to the store Thursday. He came into the store Thursday. He gave him 4 shopping bags full of meat and chicken. He gave him money to buy a whole book. He says, you're going to go back and forth every week to home. And every month you come here, you'll pick up 4 bags of food, chicken and meat, whatever he gave him, to have mood. You have what to go home with food. This was, his tzedakah was, in the mamash, he was, Avram is chesed and Aaron is shalom. He was an Eev shalom and he chesed. All the hatzlach was like away. There's a guy after my father passed away. He called up. He told somebody that he lost the biggest customer. Who was the biggest customer? He was selling chassidish begodim. Like these beketches and things my father didn't wear. Well, how was he the biggest customer? Because my father had an account over there. And people that couldn't afford the clothes would go in there and they would buy it and put it on the account. So whenever my father passed away, he lost a customer. This is all in the world of money. I'm gonna say one more story because this is the hafli. We have to take a lesson from it, how to act. And this is very much when we go through life. We're a lot of times put in a moment where we have to do the things the Yiddish way, or you do the things the way we're trained in a Goyish way. So my father was one day in the bank. How do we know the story also from the bank teller told the story to my sister in Florida a few weeks ago. So that's how we know the story. He walked into the bank and he sees outside the bank a little Yiddish boy crying. So he stops. First of all, he stopped. He has a busy day and he has to say, England, why are you crying? So he says because his mother gave him a deposit of money. It was a fair sum of money. And he was holding the deposit slip, and the deposit he was holding, but the money that was in the deposit slip fell out. So he came to the bank and he had nothing to deposit. So my father, it doesn't follow me. He goes inside to the teller, and he tells the teller that you should know that the money that I deposited before, I found the money. So I didn't know, but I just found the guy who it belongs to, so take it out of my account and put it into his account. The teller knew exactly what her father was doing. But so she did it, and the boy was very happy. Who knows? Mama saved the kid's life. But this is the way we can do chesed. The way. If you looked at him, you saw a businessman. But beyond that, the outside, he was busy. My mother had a store. The mother Chaim Tevin, she had a store, and she gave out. Everybody knows. Some of you know. I see you shaking your head. Like a Crown's restaurant, 18th Avenue. It was a restaurant. The paying customer came second. The first one that got served was one of the korbanos of this raid. Was this restaurant because they couldn't afford to hold it up anymore. That's why Dafka closed. They wish to help. I just want to finish up over here. The way he looked at a yid, Mamish, he looked at a yid after the raid. I heard the story from my nephew. I was not there then. He was in Borough Park, and one of the people that there was discussion that he was working, but that was part of the problem upon him. He was walking and he saw my father, so he crossed the street. So he shouldn't have to bump into my father. He's staying. My father sees him. He runs across the street, and he stops him and they're talking for a few minutes. When he comes, so my sister told my nephew who this guy is, and he couldn't believe it that he goes to talk to him after such as that. So he comes back and he couldn't. He asks Zayda, how can you talk to him after such a maisa? So he says, when a yid does something wrong, it's not the yid doing it. It's a Yetzirah doing it. And I wanted to make sure that I could try to say Shabbos to him. I said, weiter good Shabbos on the Eivish, the fear the Welt, the Eivish, the telephone. And this is, we talk about a lot, we learn about the Neshar B'tocha, but I lived in a house. My father came to America. He was an immigrant, and he worked everything he had. He worked very hard. I don't think he ever made money by a good stock deal or some wonderful stock deal or real estate. Everything he did was he worked very, very hard day and night. But it was not that sometimes in all those times he slept. I'm saying all these stories not to everybody, people listening to, hopefully whoever's listening to take in their own life. We are, even though simple people, we should see a meaning that they wish to put us in every massive, not stamazeh. We have an ability to do a chesed to somebody. We have ability to like I said before, from Misker Rebbe was very close to my father was very close to him. He gave me a lot of kiruv, a lot of the first ones to help and organize for me my plight. And I remember going to say had to go to his house, but the Misker Rebbe. My mother, I want to tell you, after had a meeting in his room with all the Askanim, and afterwards he asked me to come, and he was not feeling well then. He called me in the back, and with a beautiful smile, I wondered, what do you want to talk to me about? What do you want to talk to me about? He wanted to know how I'm doing personally. That's what he wanted to know personally, if I'm doing well, and it was amazing. To me, it was mamash amazing, his love. Akopone, my father, he made sure that the Eibishter, the Munah and the Betochen, the Eibishter was never lost in the hardest of times. That type of person worked for something 50 years and got such a zetz. He said clearly many times he has no tightness to the Eibishter. And what do we know? And Al Simcha was always he was mechazik a lot of people with his look. People looked at him and instead of seeing a beaten person, they saw a person who was upbeat, who was able to smile, who was able to get up in the morning and weiter arbeit and weiter to, because that's his aveda. And they gave him the schus to work to the last day. And they also gave us schus that a few years even before he passed away, they made a nest for his son, for myself. And I was able to make that we have to mention the president, that we have a wonderful president, and they was a great shliach of Eibishter, and they made a nest and took me out of prison, and I was zeicher to go to his house, and we walked outside, and what did we do outside? We all said Shema Yisrael and Hashem Lakein Hashem Echad. We all felt a tremendous gratitude to Hashem. And so we should all be strengthening our emunah in these difficult times. In very difficult times today, people are hurting very much, and people, if I can, get closer to Eibishter, do more for Eibishter you can do. If whoever has money can support the Mesa, the Oorah, and what's their extension to what you're doing and yourself. And together we all be zeicher for our Gula Shleima. May it should be speedily now.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Mishal Mordechai. And Achanu, we're heading it back to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Rabbi Schnell. I want to thank everybody who is tuned in with us this evening on Oorahthon 2019. We're going to have a very special message to kind of wrap up this tribute hour from our very own Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss. Following which, after we are done with that, we'll move on to the next part of our program. We will have some tremendous interviews, some exciting things. We have, I believe, Rabbi Lurkowitz will be coming up very soon. I think that a lot of people, my phone has been buzzing out of my pocket because people waiting for Rabbi Lurkowitz and, of course, his esteemed sidekick, Yitzi the Pitzel Simcha, who will be with him. So all you Buchrim out there, all you awkward Buchrim out there, who I heard you, right? All of you Buchrim out there, I will, hang on to that. Now, we're reminding you, you got to donate to Oorah. This is not a free thing. You can't just watch and not donate. You got to call right now, 1-877-7-AUCTION, 1-877-7-AUCTION. We want you to win one of these tremendous prizes. We don't want you to just sit here watching and being all inspired, and then you're going to go and then say Tillim, and that's going to be it. No, go to oorahauction.org or call 1-877-7-AUCTION. Whilst you do that, you may continue to pay attention to the inspiring, entertaining, and wonderful program. We're going to have a short commercial break. We're going to be back with Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss, who's going to wrap it up and with some take-home messages of inspiration, and then we're going to have some tremendous Kirov interviews coming up. We're going to talk about prizes. We're going to start pulling prizes. We're going to have more kumsitzes, and we're going to have the awkward Rabbi Lurkowitz, who's going to be with us. Plus, Rabbi Avram Kravitz is joining me soon. That's going to be awesome. We always wait for him. This year, his daughter's already a Kala, so he's going to be completely unhinged. So we look forward to that. It's going to be great. Welcome back to the Oorah auction. It is 2020, not 2019. It just feels like 2019. I know. I said 2019 by mistake. How terrible am I? Anyways, we have, it was a beautiful hour of inspiration, but to kind of really wrap it up and bring it home as you dial in 1-877-7-AUCTION or go online at oorahauction.org, we have a special message with us. Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss is going to grace us with a special mention. Now, Rabbi Weiss has been involved in the Oorahthon since its inception, and he's really, he's a very warm relationship with Oorah. He's a Talmud of Reb Chaim Mintz. He's the Rav of Agudas Yisrael of Staten Island, the renowned speaker, and a Marbitz Torah whose shiurim I listened to by thousands. So we thank Rabbi Moshe Weiss for agreeing to join with us tonight and kind of really taking and building on all that we've heard in the last hour, all these inspirational stories, and really bringing it home with a bit of a takeaway message of inspiration regarding what we've gone through over the last month. Rabbi Weiss?
Good Tavach, everyone. Guten Chodesh. What an honor to join the world-famous, legendary Oorahthon. And before I even start, I want to remind you that while it's nice to listen, please call 1-877-7-AUCTION or go to oorahauction.org. That's Oorah with an H, auction.org. You know, if you didn't give a pledge yet, you can win $36,000 or $18,000 or the jackpot, 100 tickets in each prize, and that's really a jackpot. You know, that's not bad. So, but you got to be in it to win it. So 1-877-7-AUCTION. The last hour you've heard about the great people that we've lost during this challenging time. I know as an Aguda Rav what it meant to have at the helm of the Aguda the Novominsker Rebbe, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha, Zchusa Yogan Aleinu, Rosh Agudas Yisrael, how he used to crown the conventions with his Hasidic oratory. It was really, it set the tone at Motzei Shabbos keynote addresses, and how he represented Klal Yisrael in so many areas. I mean, just before he passed away, he gave a very important message about being careful during the COVID epidemic, which probably saved lives. And we lost Rav Leibel Katz, the Oyel Aryeh. You know, Rav Leibel Katz is saying Daf Yomi in Borough Park. This was probably his 8th cycle of Daf Yomi. He had such, I just spoke by his Siyam Hashas just a few months ago. and I saw a room full of the most dedicated balabatim, talmidim, what Rav Leibel Katz meant to the world, the hundreds, if not thousands, of people that he taught the chassan classes. He taught me chassan classes 39 years ago. And what about Rami Cohn? Rami Cohn, the great moyel, the great partisan, Rami Cohn, who did thousands upon thousands of Mila of Russians. I was once a sandik by a Mila that he did for a 50-year-old man behind the Iron Curtain. It was a regular thing by him. Rami mauled all my children. I remember one time Rami told me, Rabbi Weiss, I put in so much into the Mila and I did so many Milas. And he told me this, if somebody would cut off his head, he felt his hand would finish the Mila. That's how dedicated he was to Bris Milah. Rami Cohn, he should be a good better for all of us. And we lost also many, many quiet people, wonderful people, important people. I was thinking to myself, as we're slowly starting to come out of lockdown, phase one, with trepidation, with worry. We hope there won't be another wave. We hope there won't be a spike. We hope as we slowly go out from mitigation, that there shouldn't be repercussions with the help of Hashem. And I'm thinking to myself, we know the cabin fever of being quarantined. Could you imagine a Yiddish neshama that's inside a child that goes to public school? That heilige neshama, that holy spark, is quarantined. And that's what Ura does. It breaks them out. It puts them into yeshiva. And don't think Ura's been so busy, even during the quarantine. And the Rebbetzins are hatching up shidduchin and Torah mates. Whoa! This is a bonanza for Torah mates. I mean, you could be a virtual Torah mate and change your life. People are hungry. People are looking. And by the way, that could be one of the greatest accomplishments of this Oorahthon. Get involved in and become a Torah mate. 1-800-TORAH, TORAH, 123. 1-800-TORAH, 123. You have a little time, a half an hour a week, change your life. It'll change your life too. It'll create a bond that you'll never forget. 1-800-TORAH, TORAH, 123. And call 1-8777-auction, Oorahauction.org. You called already, call a friend. Hello, did you give yet to Ura? You got to hear, it's very interesting. The Oorahthon. And give to this wonderful organization that saves neshamas. You know, we want protection. Tzedakah tatzel memaves. This is the greatest protection. Giving tzedakah is the greatest protection that you can imagine. I want to leave you with a thought. We work on trying to better ourselves after this. Well, let me ask you something. Do you ever think, why would Hashem take shul away from us? Doesn't he want us to come into his house? Many years ago, there was a problem that the tefillin had glue. And people found out that they didn't wear kosher tefillin their entire life. So we asked Rav Moshe, the Rosh Hashiva, Moreinu v'Rabbeinu, why would Hashem do that? And Rosh Hashiva said, because people don't thank Hashem for the privilege to wear tefillin. They think it's coming to them. We have to thank Hashem for the privilege of going to shul. So Mirz Hashem, as we start opening up and go to shul, let's appreciate it. Let's appreciate an Amen Yeshmei Rabbah, an Amen. Let's appreciate a Rav's Drasha. We want to thank you, Ura, for awakening Klal Yisrael. Chazak ve'amat. So call now, 1-877-7-auction, Oorahauction.org, and have a good tavach and a good nechayt.